Yeah, I mean, so that's what U.S. corporate media does is they
Mm-hmm.
repeat a lot of propaganda to get people riled up for they like how many times have they beat the drums for war? And now it's getting really dangerous because look at all this propaganda that's put out there against China and against Russia.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is influenced by actually Taiwan, and this was reported on and discussed in Mint Press News by Alan McLeod in this great article. So we're going to talk about that here today. I'm going to pull up that article here on the screen for everybody to see. So this was again, this was published on Mint Press News by Alan McLeod. It's called "Tanks and Think Tanks: How Taiwanese Cash is Funding the Push to War with China." So it says in 2019, Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office in the United States, or TECRO, for all intents and purposes, the Taiwanese embassy donated between $250,000 and $499,999 to Brookings Institute. And the Brookings Institute is commonly identified as the world's most influential think tank. Taiwanese tech companies have also given large sums to the organization. In turn, Brookings Institute staff like Richard C. Bush, a former member of the National Intelligence Council and the U.S. National Intelligence Officer for East Asia, vociferously championed the cause of Taiwanese nationalists and routinely condemned Beijing's attempts to bring the island more closely under control. Some other points. Other Taiwan employed academics have chided the West on the pages of the Council's website for its insufficient zeal in deterring Chinese aggression against the island. A decision by the United States to back down, wrote Philip Anston, a Swedish recipient of a fellowship from the Taiwanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, could damage the credibility of U.S. defense guarantees and signal that Washington's will to defend its allies is weak. Anstrin also insisted that Europe's future is on the line in the Taiwan Strait. Western democratic nations have moral obligation vis-a-vis Taiwan, he added on his blog. And Western democracies have a duty to ensure that Taiwan not only survives but also thrives. The reason this is important is that the Atlantic Council is an enormously influential think tank. Its board of directors is a who's who in foreign policy statecraft, featuring no fewer than 7 former CIA directors. Also on the board are many of the architects of the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Get this, guys. It includes Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, and James Baker. When organizations like this begin beating the war drums, everybody should take note. And just like we just discussed with Biden, who has a 40-year track record of pushing for war and implementing policies, fascist policies like the 1994 crime bill, like what Ali was discussing, and she's preparing it for her article, these public and private partnerships, the definition of fascism. That's when we should be questioning these things the most.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the most strongly anti-Beijing think tank in Washington is the conservative Hudson Institute, an organization frequented by many of the Republican Party's most influential figures, including former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former Vice President Mike Pence, and Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Those are I can't think of any individuals that are more conservative than them that are serving in
Right.
government.
What a
The
crew.
words China or Chinese appear 137 times in Hudson's latest annual report. So focused on the Asian nation are they. Indeed, reading their output, it often appears they care about little else but ramping up tensions with Beijing, condemning it for its treatment of Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Uyghur Muslims, and warning of the economic and military threat of rising China. And I highly recommend you guys to check out a discussion that I had with Carl Zaw, as well as a discussion that I had with Bay Area 415, in which we were debunking mainstream media claims and even some independent or quote unquote independent media claims against China when it comes to what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims and how it's vastly over exaggerated. Um, so, and this is another important point here. Like the Atlantic Council, the CSIS organization is stacked with senior officials from the national security state. Its president and CEO is former Deputy Secretary of Defense John Henry, while Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State and the architect of the Vietnam War, also serves on its council. Now, Ali and Marcus, the think tanks, what they use in their defense, like when these allegations are made, they're like, oh, you guys are receiving money from Taiwan. Like, isn't this a conflict of interest? And then they say, when we receive money, this doesn't affect. Like, we're still going to be objective with our rhetoric.
Right.
What are your
Right.
thoughts on that?
I mean, it's gaslighting. 'Cause you just watch them. No, I mean, it's a revolving door. It's gaslighting. It's just like you go look with your own eyes and then listen to them. And this is again also going to be this is reflective of what's to come with Biden when it comes to China, how his administration is going to want to deal with China, which is going to be like these kind of, I mean, they'll still work together, of course, but it's not going to be like Trump's tariff war, even though I don't believe that Biden has cut any of the tariffs that are currently on China, but that's a different story. The fascist's gone, right? So yay. Anyway, I think that we'll just see more of this because it's kind of like more subversive ways of, we're propping up Taiwan and not so much China. And interestingly enough, this is also just a bit of a side note, but there was a woman named Kayla Chow, and she's a Taiwanese American journalist at the Voice of America, which is part of, she's the acting interim CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which is what I was talking about at the beginning. That's that CIA, founded propaganda wing that has become its own, independent agency now with a different name. My point is that Biden, he appointed her like pretty much on day, I think it was like day 3 of stepping in office. So there's a very clear objective here, which is to, we're going to be supportive of Taiwan and just anti-China in different various ways. And this is just another way that we're going to go about it, especially with the think tanks. They're all friends. I mean, I wish people would realize that. Like all these people that hang out in these think tanks, they're politician friends. They give each other talks. It's like, don't you all talk to each other enough? Like, how many events can you have where you're just giving more, like summits on the state of the world? They all have a very clear neoliberal, but very fascistic agenda.
100%.
And authoritarian, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about, like, especially what you were saying about the revolving door. We have elected officials and they get out and then now they're lobbyists. Well, that's even more evidence of what we were talking about with the fascism in the U.S. And I've been concerned about it and noticed it for a long time because I used to say, okay, in Italy, they literally just took like the head of Ferrari and now he's the head of transportation. Well, what's the difference here? In the U.S., what we do is random CEOs just fill up their coffers and then they do everything they say. So instead of being one company, which is over one particular seat or position, now we have each of our politicians as a whole just being bought off by thousands of companies and completely sold out. And even if they vote the wrong way and the public finally wises up a little and say, hey, they're corrupt, we need to get them out of there. Well, they just go on ahead and become a lobbyist because they already know, because they've been doing the bidding of these people for so long, they're going to give them a soft parachute. And many of them are already planning that anyway. They're just trying to see, okay, if I stay a senator this amount of time, when I get out, I can ask for this amount of money. That's the only thing that's going on. And when you said, why do they hang out so much? If you were robbing people blind, I mean, and then you get them to not only come out and vote for you, but get them to argue with other people on your behalf.
They do your bidding.
I would be high-fived it too, because I'm like, wow, we really did a number on these people. These people are dumb as hell. And that's America. But I mean, think about, I'm trying to remember, some of the legislation would still have the, I can't remember the name of the group, but it would still have like their letterhead on the top of it. And they forgot to take it off when they were introducing it for a bill. And I mean, it's the same company, which like Walmart, McDonald's, all these large companies are on, where all their lawyers and all that write these bills and then hand them to one of the lower staff assistants of some congressperson. And then somehow they come up with this 1,000-page legislation when you see all they've been doing is golfing most of the time.
Right.
It's
There's the 1,000-page legislation that always comes out. It's like they just worked all night and typed it all up right then, and then this crazy thing happened, and ooh, we've got prepackaged legislation for that event that happened.
I'm glad you brought up McDonald's, because I mean, people don't think about how McDonald's can be one of these companies that really profits off of war because of their contract with Halliburton. And a lot of these politicians have stocks with Halliburton. Halliburton lobbies a
In
lot,
fact,
and they pay a lot of these politicians. And then McDonald's expands, like when
My first
Halliburton
command-
goes to like
my first
Iraq
command
or
was at
or
a Burger
Afghanistan,
King
like
in Italy.
all these like fast food companies, like when Halliburton is at like Iraq or Afghanistan, like that's like McDonald's and all these fast food companies, like they start spreading across the country.
Yeah.
And like and they weren't there before, like McDonald's, Burger King, all these fast food companies.
Nestle.
Oh my God,
That's a
Nestle.
big one.
They don't think about
Yeah.
Nestle. They just think about candy, and they don't realize how much water Nestle produces. And so it's a lot of companies that we don't think about, and how, like, a lot of people still to this day think of Bill Gates as a tech guy. And it's like, he hasn't been doing that for a long time.
No.
But most of the people are so behind and understanding what's going on that they're still thinking that he's the Microsoft guy.
Yeah,
They're not
he's still
thinking
working on
about what the hell
Microsoft.
he does now and all these Davos, initiatives and stuff that he pushes, and
Oh yeah.
stuff like the Great Reset. So
Yeah, and the Gavi Kovacs facility that he's just hoarding or fixing to eventually like just own like a stockpile of vaccines for. We'll get into that topic later, but yeah, it's just like he's greedy as shit. Like I don't know how else I think he owns the most land in the United States now too. So
Oh
computers
yeah,
are,
yeah,
like,
that came out
hardly-
recently.
yeah. So I don't know what he's doing. I'd love to know.
Also, what came out
Mhm.
recently, interestingly, is that he's going to divorce his wife of 27 years,
Yep.
Melinda
I know. So sorry, guys. So sorry.
Gates.
I'm like, what? Their evil plans didn't work out. They had different evil plans.
your
that
evil
day.
plan, my evil plan's better than your evil plan. No, it's not.
I'm just like thinking of him like
Is that
going
their
out now and like
argument?
trying to like pick up a chick and just being like, "Are you vaccinated?" Just like fucking trying to like get like women creepy as fuck. Yeah.
So there's
He's
two
horrified.
more important figures that this article brings up that these Taiwanese lobbyists pay, and that's Adrian Zenz and Nancy Pelosi. I went into depth with about Adrian Zenz with Bay Area 415 when we were debunking all these claims, these anti-China claims about the Uyghur Muslims. But I'm just gonna read real quick what it says here. So it says in where is it? The TFD has also been a major funder of the Victims Communism Memorial Foundation, a far-right pressure group that insists that communism has killed over 100 million people worldwide. Last year, the Victims of Communism Memorial added all global COVID-19 fatalities to the list communist-caused deaths on the basis that the virus started in China. I mean, why can't they do that with like capitalism? Like all these COVID-19
Right.
deaths in the U.S. are caused by capitalism, right?
But see,
Yeah,
Same
right.
exact logic. The foundation also employs Adrian Zenz, a German evangelical theologian who is the unlikely source of many of the most controversial contested claims about Chinese repression in Xinjiang. So this is a guy who thinks that he was gifted by God to fight against communism and fight against China, which is the Antichrist. And I've gone into depth about Adrian Zenz with Bay Area 415. You guys should definitely check out that interview. So and then the article goes on to say that Freeman's study of the Taiwanese lobby found that 7 organizations registered as Taiwan's foreign agents in the U.S. Those organizations in turn contacted 476 members of Congress, including almost 90% of the House, as well as 5 congressional committees. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was their most frequent contact. The Californian being contacted 34 times by Taiwanese agents. Pelosi has been a great supporter of Taiwanese nationalists, successfully promoting pro-Taiwan legislation and proudly announcing that the U.S. stands with Taiwan. Ali and Marcus, what are your thoughts?
Not surprised, because Taiwan's just essentially like a vassal state of the United States. That's all it is. They want that to be, the counter to the superpower that is China. I love how they all act like they didn't know that China was clearly planning to become a lot more globally competitive, because of a lot of the neoliberal policies that caused all this shit in the first place. I mean, I'm just taking mostly like what the United States has done towards China in the last 40 years. So Taiwan is like their greatest resources. And again, that's why I go back to channels like Voice of America, which is essentially the propaganda arm of the United States, because these channels all over the world, including in Taiwan, are pushing messages like that are all pro America, anti-China, just furthering divisions and such. So that's one aspect of it. And the other, of course, they're calling Nancy all the time because Nancy's in bed with all of them. They're all in bed together. Like, they're all they've all got money invested in all of this. So they're going to protect their investments. And they've worked really damn hard to keep things the way they are. And they were clearly pretty shaken up, at least a bit, for a few years there, because you would listen to them talk at the Council on Foreign Relations, like people like Biden. And there was definitely some uncertainty. So I think now that they've got their guy back, to be the face of this group of people that just won't fucking go away, they're like going full speed with it because they're like, we got to go. So that's my thoughts. How about you, Marcus?
I think that these people are playing a very dangerous game. That's what I think they're doing, because they're thinking that we can just prop up, a country that if China gets out of line, we could just put China in line. Like China is Venezuela. Like China is, Costa Rica, China is not some little small country which you can just manipulate, or even a mid-sized country.
No.
China is a superpower, and they're already making the mistake of trying to take a tiny country to prop up against China. That's already one mistake that they're making. But here's the thing. They're not only doing it with Taiwan, they're doing it with multiple countries right now. At the same time, they're doing the same thing with Russia, with Ukraine. They're trying to back Ukraine to use that as an arm or leverage against Russia. What that's starting to do is starting to push those two together. Yeah. Now you have India with this whole, vaccination situation, them wanting a bunch of vaccinations, and America sitting on their hands and ignoring them and won't give them any supplies or ventilators or anything. They're like, really? Is that how it is? Now, the government hasn't made an official statement, but the sentiment in the streets and the news and stuff like that from India, it is very, very anti-American right now. And so what I'm seeing is, whereas Trump was already making, he was like breaking off the friendships, Biden is coming in here and he's really like throwing the first like shot across the bow at some of these countries and being very, very verbose. And I mean, it's almost like Reagan is back in power. That's what
or
it
that
feels
he never
like.
Yeah,
left.
he never left. Yeah,
this is like Reagan time now. They're ready to just start fighting with but what it is, they're going to say that they're not trying to fight with anybody. But
never.
If you walk around trying to puff your chest out in everybody's face and saying, shut up or I'll smack you, everybody's not going to sit down. And that's what I feel like it's starting to rear its head right now. Because not only that, now you got North Korea starting to get pissed off again. and so what you're doing is, okay, you can deal with one enemy or one other enemy here, but if you look back to ancient history, just like Rome, when it started to fall, Rome was embroiled with conflicts everywhere. They were trying to fight everybody at the same damn time. And America is just picking up another, and it's like, okay, they're not fighting, but they're getting at that point where one wrong ship gets hit out or sunk out to sea, and we're at war. And you already started putting these other nations against you, which already are working together. Not to mention Iran is doing business with China and Russia. It's you're setting up one side against you. You're like literally splitting the world in half and hoping that all your buddies are going to be on your side.
Yeah, and hoping to make some money.
We're playing a very dangerous game. And most people just want to pay attention to, I want to go back to brunch and pay attention to whatever stupid shit Rachel Maddow sings. But I'm like, as a nation, we're at the precipice of war, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in war. It's just forever. I mean, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like now Biden's like, oh, it's over. Yeah, but it's like the war on terror in Afghanistan is over. I'm like, oh, right. So are you going to tell everybody how you're going to be sending a lot of special forces back to Africa to make sure that the settlements and mines that you want to, you know, protect for yourselves to, you know, for the fourth industrial revolution that is here. It's just like you only get a quarter of the story, if that. It's never like, oh, the war, everyone's coming home. It's like, no, we're just relocating them and calling them special forces, not, you know, the army's like invading. And yeah, it's the same shit, but just with a smile.
Yeah.
So you could have Trump, it's like, we're at war, or do you have Biden that's like, we're pursuing our strategic interests together?
I'll say that the difference though is, it's one thing when we're fighting against so-called terrorists and, you know, smaller, poorer nations in the Middle East, halfway around the world, who don't have technology to strike back at you. But now we're going to be dealing with people who actually do have military technology to actually hit the United States and do damage. And it's not going to be like the United States and be like, well, if we go to war, oh, well, we're going to go fight it on your land. Not necessarily. Some conflicts might end up over here. And you got to remember, a lot of nations are buying up land all over the United States.
China's one of them.
Oh, yeah.
China bought up a ton of land,
in the neighboring countries, too.
Also.
Negotiating with the Latin American countries.
That's what I'm saying. And so what they're doing is, just like how the old Monroe Doctrine started off saying, you guys don't come over here into the Americas. Now everybody is creeping over into the Americas. And all they have to do is just sit there and wait and coordinate an attack, and we will be completely off guard. And I'm not wishing for nothing like that, but I'm just saying, pay attention to it and keep it in your back of your mind as a crazy if and. But we could be looking at a possible World War III situation if they keep doing the things they're doing.
And remember one of the last times you were here, Marcus, when we talked about John Kerry's plan to combat climate change, like some of the ways that he was planning was to build bases around countries and in other regions where China has negotiated with those countries, and to fight Russia in the Arctic. Because resources there, like we can't let China and Russia obtain these dangerous resources, so we're gonna fight them with war. It's so stupid. It's like the war on terror, the war against. Now they're gonna say the war against climate change, as if like war is gonna make these things go away and not exacerbate them.
Remember, Biden said we gotta win. Remember,
I was just gonna say it's the war for the 21st century, meaning the fourth industrial revolution.
Which we're gonna get into right now.